Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what I think is a very exciting evening. It is a political roundtable. And if you're wondering what a political roundtable is, there's a good reason for that, because this is a sort of an old FCCJ tradition, which maybe was carried out, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. And it died out, mainly when people who were organizing, for example, our monthly financial nights or whatever, moved on out of Japan. And when those journalists left, often the program left with them. But we're now in an attempt to revive this old tradition, but with some new twists. And let me explain a little bit about what this roundtable series is about. First of all, in principle, this is going to be a monthly series. So more or less every month, we will have usually 2 speakers to discuss issues in Japanese politics. And the point is to, rather than have these one-off sort of press conferences that we still regularly have at the FCCJ, this is something more to deepen our knowledge and as the members of the club to understand better this country and its political system that we're living in. This series is the political roundtable, but the hope is that there will be other sorts of thematic roundtables in the future organized by other regular members. So in the past, for example, there was a financial roundtable. There could be a roundtable on technology issues. But in order to launch those programs, we will need regular members who are willing to take responsibility for organizing them. And people willing to take that volunteer time seem to be few at the moment, but we're going to do our best to find the right people. This is different from other sorts of FCCJ events in the sense that it's open in principle to FCCJ members only. Why is that? Well, at the moment, almost every event that the FCCJ has is fully open to the public. And I've had cases of people who came up to me and said something like, well, you know, I joined the FCCJ because I liked the press conferences and it seemed to be exciting. And so I paid my money and I joined the club. And since I joined, I'm doing the same exact things that I did before I joined. That there was no extra value that came with paying monthly dues, that came with becoming members of the club. And so one of the great objectives here is to create extra value for FCCJ members. Now that doesn't mean that everybody here is a regular member, but for those of you who are not, you're free to come and fully participate one time. And if you like this event and you think it's of value to you professionally and personally, then we invite you to join the FCCJ as members. And over on the table, you'll find membership information ready and waiting for you if you decide to seize that opportunity. The folders with the blue paper on top are for journalist members, regular members, and those with the pink on top are for associate members, non-journalist members. Also, if you have not done it yet, we also would like everybody who participates tonight to leave one copy of your meishi, your name card up there, so we know who it is that we had among us, and we can follow up appropriately. And if you haven't done it yet, then we'll have a break later. One other point that's quite different about this event than from one of our press conferences is that it's much more about interaction. Our normal press conferences is that our speaker gives a lecture, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then that's followed by a Q&A session. And the people from this side, you get to ask questions. One question, please, then you go sit down. But in this event, we want to hear your opinions. We want to have discussion. It's much more back and forth. Simply because these 2 gentlemen are up here, with the nameplates in front of them doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from you too, because they're to help guide us in the discussion, but it's also meant to be a back and forth process for us all to learn more. Because I do know we have many people from embassies sitting around this table that I can see, and I also see some of our journalist friends who I know are knowledgeable people. So please don't hesitate if you feel it's time for an opinion to put your hand up and to speak out. Also, it's an event for networking. Many of our press conferences, you come, you sit down, you look at the main speaker, and then you leave without having really interacted with anybody except whoever might have happened to be sitting at the table next to you when you're eating your lunch. In this event, what we really want you to do is to leave this event having met not only these two people, but anybody in the room who you want to meet. We'll have time to do that in the middle of the event. There will be something like a 10-minute break about halfway through the event for those purposes. So I think that covers some of the different ground rules that go with the Roundtable series. And I would now like to move towards the introduction of the two speakers and discussants who we have to lead us today. This man here is Mr. Takatane Kiuchi. And he'll correct me if I get anything wrong, but my understanding is that he was formerly a banker with Tokyo Bank Mitsubishi, UFJ. And in 2009, he ran as a Democratic Party of Japan candidate in the House of Representatives election. And in that great Seiken Kotai election, he swept into office, and he became a member of the Diet. However, his experience as a member of the ruling party was not what he had hoped for. And by the year 2012, he was quite disillusioned with the Democratic Party of Japan. And in the middle of the year, he left the party. And he became an independent. And in fact, he also gathered around him a number of other independent lawmakers and created what was called briefly the Association of Reform Independents. They had 5 lawmakers at one time, so they were able to form their own parliamentary caucus with him as the leader. But in the same way that the wave swept one direction in 2009, it swept a very different direction in December of 2012. And Mr. Kiuchi lost his seat in the House of Representatives, but he continues to be active in politics. He was very active at one part of the Tokyo gubernatorial campaign as well. So he's definitely still involved in the political world, and he has a lot of insight to share with us, I think. And on the further side of Mr. Kiuchi is Michael Thomas Cucek. He is an independent analyst of Japanese politics. And when I say independent analyst, I think he shows all of the best characteristics of being an independent analyst. Because when he gives you his analysis, you're getting it from somebody who doesn't have an institutional axe to grind of one sort or another. His blog, Shisaku, is one of those most important sources, I think, for understanding Japanese politics, because he has a lot of insight, very creative, and it's always a pleasure to interact with him. If you study Japanese politics, you should interact with this guy, because he has a lot of interesting things to say. Well, now, as you know from those of you who read the sheet, our topic today, our main topic, although I'm sure we'll cover many other things, is the revival of moderate politics in Japan. What does that mean? Well, part of that is what we're going to define together. But clearly, this administration of Shinzo Abe has brought with it a certain ideology, a certain point of view about Japanese politics, which is not exactly the same as most of what had gone before. That includes former LDP governments. And the question which we want to start with is the Abe administration the beginning of the new wave of the future of Japanese politics? Are we going to look back at Abe as the beginning of a new chapter that goes forward from here? Or is it an aberration? Is it just that a certain group of lawmakers happens to have captured power under a very unique set of circumstances, and very soon we will see things go back to the normal style of Japanese politics? And I ask this question first to Mr. Kiuchi to give your opening opinion on that broad theme.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Takatane Kiuchi. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. It's a great privilege to be here at the Foreign Correspondents Press Center. This place makes me tense very much because if you see the picture on the left side, there's a picture of Prime Minister Kakue Tanaka. He was here back in 1974, and press conference at this place led him to his resignation of the Prime Minister. And my father happened to be his secretary at the time, and he arranged the press conference. So he had a lot of blame for Prime Minister's resignation. So I'm a little bit tense, so it may take some time to make me relax, but I'm very happy to be here. Mr. Abe, he went to same school as I did, junior high school and high school. And I originally liked him as a prime minister back in, 2006, 7, 8. And I thought he was going to be a nice, good prime minister at the time. However, lots of people, he's giving me lots of concerns that is he swinging too much to the right, yes or no? And I don't think he's an ultra-nationalist or someone who is acting too much. But some of his colleagues and some of the statements he has been making recently, it is starting to give me some concerns towards China, to Korea, and even to our strongest ally, to the US. In terms of Abenomics, I used to work for Merrill Lynch until 2008 August. I quit Merrill Lynch to run for the leadership for the general election campaign, and a month later there was the so-called Lehman shock. Lots of people said I have good insight into the future, or lots of people said I ran out of the sinking boat. I don't know which was correct, but if my decision was made 2 months later, I would not have been selected as the candidate. So probably I would not have happened to have to lose my seat at this time. This Abe administration, there are two sides. Abenomics, lots of people say bad things about him, but I like his economic policy in principle. But in terms of national security point of view, I think he is trying to revise the post-war history. If you talk about, for example, Tokyo trial, I have lots of complaints, or I have lots of things that I want to say about the Tokyo trial. But Japan was a defeated country. And so we had to face what we did in the past. And that's what we've been doing post-war history. After the war, there was the Yoshida prime minister. He decided to have a strategy of military light, heavy economic strategy, which at the time went very well, and it was good for Japan. But lots of people are feeling or were feeling uncomfortable about the lack of national security strategies. But I also share some feelings about Abe. On the other hand, he's trying to turn around all the history understandings, which I'm starting to feel uncomfortable. So this is what people are concerning about what is Japanese conservatism. In post-war, lots of people thought conservatism was Yoshida, Ikeda, the moderate conservatism. But recently, Abe's is going a little bit too much to the right. So I think we need some other options. DPJ failed to perform well from 2009 to 2012. But at the same time, Abe-san did not fail to perform well in his first administration. Therefore, my vision is right now to reconsolidate all the opposition parties together and give people of Japan some other options, which is a moderate conservatism. It's not too liberal, it's not too conservative. I want a new party which sits right in the middle of this ideology. The Tokyo Governor campaign in February, I was leading the campaign in the initial part. We had a big fight during the campaign, so I was kind of let off during the campaign.
That's the Hosokawa campaign, by the way.
Tokyo Governor campaign. And it was not only a matter of Tokyo Governor campaign. I thought that would lead to a new party. I don't know what Koizumi-san or Hosokai-san is thinking right now, but lots of people were thinking to set up a new party. Probably it will include DPJ. Probably it will include Nihon Ishinokai and Minanoto, but they're all split up in too many small parties. So I want to discuss about your opinions, what new party should look like, and what moderate conservatism is.
Okay, well, that's a very comprehensive opening statement. Now I'd like to move it to Michael Cucek for his opening statement. And again, I throw the same question at him, which wasn't exactly answered in his presentation. Is Abe the wave of the future, or is he an aberration?
In a historical sense, Abe is a continuation of a long-time thread in Japanese politics. Mr. Kiuchi pointed up to Tanaka up there. He is the leader of the one thread, which is the Tanaka-Takeshita faction that came down through Obuchi and provided prime ministers through the 1990s. That faction's grip on the prime minister's office was broken, and by the sudden election of Mori after the death of Obuchi. And then we have gone into the other, what was used to be called the non-mainstream faction, but since it's provided most of the prime ministers since then, except for during the DPJ interregnum, it's really the mainstream. So in terms of your question, I would say that Abe is the wave of the past and the future. He is simply carrying on the Kakufuku fight, the Kakue Tanaka Fukuda fight, with the Fukuda faction prevailing as it has since the millennium. In a broader sense, though, you brought together this group today in order to discuss moderate conservatism. And I'm extremely lucky in that I don't believe there is such a thing. And I don't believe there's any space for it in Japanese politics at the present. That makes me the party pooper at this party. In so far as why I believe that, well, I'm very lucky that talk is happening today, because we have, as a demonstration of my beliefs, what happened yesterday, where the Abes gave us the two opposites of what's going on. We have Mr. Abe, the Prime Minister, going to the Meiji Shrine, and if you remember the Meiji Constitution, it wasn't so great for half of the Japanese people and all of the freaks, be they political freaks, sexual freaks, whatever freaks. They didn't have a very good time with that. And where was Mrs. Abe at that time? On a float in the Gay Pride Day parade. When you have those two opposites covered by the first couple, there's really not a lot of space for another party to try to squeeze in. The entire spectrum of political thought and social thought is covered. And that is my sense of where Abe has come in. Abe has come in as a conservative, but conservatives where, yes, some of his appointees, some of them women in fact, have really prehistoric ideas about the roles of women, but at the same time, he's promising that that 30% of the bureaucrats are going to be women. That's going to take some doing, but he's talking about it and he's setting up goals. Women are in prominent roles inside the LDP's leadership structure. Women are in prominent roles inside the cabinet, which the DPJ, during its supposedly liberal time in office, failed to do. It did not promote its women. It promoted people based on seniority for how long they'd been waiting to get a cabinet post, and that's part of the reason why they blew it, because they did not live up to their ideals and they did not live up to their image. So my belief is that Abe is in a very strong position and will be prime minister for several more years. He is also extremely lucky. He has no rivals in the party that are worth looking at. And the numbers for why do you support Abe have, in his first year in office, been primarily in terms of hopes about the economy. Now those are starting to diverge. Some people are hopeful, some people are not. But what is surging is, I like the Prime Minister, and also the very strange concept, there is nobody else. In the most recent Kyodo poll, the most common answer, why do you support Abe for Prime Minister? Because there is nobody else. Not because of economics, not because he's trustworthy, because there is nobody else.
All right, well, I'm going to open it straight into discussion. As I said, you're welcome to give either opinions or questions. Patrick Zoll jumped out with his hand. I see that there's microphones basically at each corner here. The closest one to Patrick is probably this one. So could you hand that over to him, Siegfried?
Patrick Zoll, I'm the East Asia correspondent for the Swiss newspaper Neue Zürcher Zeitung. Michael's topic is the moderate center. If we talk of center, I would assume you need something either on top and below or to the left and to the right of it. Can we talk about a political center if we don't have any left over?
I'm going to take this just on a short one. I absolutely agree. We have only two tiny micro-parties on the left, the communists and the socialists. The center is shifted to the right, so moderate centrism, what would it mean, I suppose? Yes, and in a fundamental sense. But then we are dealing with Japanese politics where it's always been on the right anyway.
The LDP back in 1960s, 70s, I think they were moderate center LDPs. So there were no space for the liberals to take up the administration. However, now that Abe-san is swinging to the right, which Michael does not agree, I think there's a space for center-left area but within the conservatism, not real liberal left parties. As Michael said, there's only social party, social Democratic Party and the Communist Party on the left. All the others, there's very little ideological differences, I think.
Is the disappearance of the political left somehow linked to the LDP branch of Abe becoming so strong, or are these two completely separate developments?
I would say completely different, separate arguments.
I would simply ask, what would a moderate left party propose in terms of economic policy? The Abe government is a conservative, right-wing, militarist, fascist government, supposedly, and yet, of all the governments of the industrialized world, it has the most liberal economic policies, bar none. Most radical in terms of monetary policy, most radical in terms of fiscal policy. No rules, we're up to our heels in debt, we don't care. Where does the left come, what can they offer? In fact, what the left does here is, in fact, offers the restrictive and constrictive policies that the right wing offers in most Western democracies.
Okay, I'm open to the floor again. There's one next to you over there.
Hi, I'm Ken Moritsugu from AP. A lot of the discussion about Japan moving to the right, or a lot of things, one of the things that we're trying to figure out is this simply a political shift to the right within the political parties, or whether there's actually any kind of shift to the right among the people, the population, the voters, right? So I kind of want to throw that question out there and get your observations on that. So if, for example, you were able to create a moderate conservative party, would that appeal to voters? And would there be is that what voters really still want today? Or is the population shifting to the right?
What I feel is that Japan has been struggling for 2 decades with a sluggish economy. We had peak wages back in 1997, and even under the Abenomic economy, lots of people think the economy is kind of recovering a little bit. But the wages is still going down, but the tax is going up, and the actual income is going down. Therefore, what will happen is that people will continue to become unhappy. So maybe Abe-san may be popular for a couple of more years, but at some stage, this economic policy, the third arrow is not working. So at one stage, people will start to be unhappy again. And when people are unhappy, it is same with other countries. People tend to swing to the right, to show hard balls against other countries, and that could lead to some conflict with other countries, which is giving me many concerns.
Yeah, I'd also like to throw this at Michael Cucek. The same question. How fundamental is the shift in Japanese public opinion? Is this Japanese public of 2014? How different is it from the public of 1964, 1974? How much has it been led by the public, and how much is it just swings in the political system?
I think it's always wise to differentiate 2 things, what we read in the newspapers and what we hear people talking about, and how and who counts the votes. The Japanese political system is a very poorly representative system at least compared to my countries, with vast disparities in voting strengths between the consumer classes in the urban areas and the producer classes in the rural areas. That's just a fact of life, and it has been a structural impediment to Japan taking advantage of its extraordinary capacities for change, which the Prime Minister has talked about just 2 weeks ago at the Economist Conference. There is tremendous capacity for mobilization and even self-mobilization. There is also a tremendously educated workforce, loyal and hardworking. And yet, politics has frittered away Japanese prosperity. The problem is that when you've been down for so long, anything looks like up. And we have now, in the generation that's growing up, the ones who are in their 20s now, they have never known economic prosperity. They have no idea what it looks like. Certain of them have a certain Showa nostalgia, and tomorrow is Showa Day, so maybe they'll have the big party tomorrow to celebrate the past that they never got to experience. But the conservatism that I see is generational. When you're older, you tend to be more conservative, and there are a lot more older people now than there have ever been in Japanese life. And at the same time, when you've never seen the results of democracy and liberal economics deliver, your tendency will be conservative as well, I think. So it goes through the generations, which is why I frequently throw things whenever I read people who fly in and write up a story about Japan and then say it will, and the new generation will bring change, and women will be like this, and men will be like this, and young people and all, and you say, no, I don't think so.
I'm kind of reminded that in the Tokyo gubernatorial election, voters in their 20s, 24% of them went for Toshio Tamogami as their candidate. 24% of voters in their 20s. How much did that shock you?
You're talking about the Tokyo governor.
Well, I'm talking about an apparent shift among the youngest voters towards not only the right, but maybe even the far right. Or is that what it is? Or was it just a protest vote and they didn't really believe in what Tamogami was talking about?
In the Tokyo governor election, Hosoka got about 950,000 votes, when Tamogami-san had over 600,000 votes, which was a big shock. And as Michael just commented, in the 20s, Tamogami was number 2 next to Masuzoe, who became the Tokyo governor. So it does look like the young generation, or the people in the 20s and also in the 30s, are swinging to the right. But it's not only right or left issue. Tamogami-san's statement is very straightforward. It's not moderate, it's extreme. So people tend to like extreme, clear-cut comments rather than saying something like a mediocre kind of statement. So that's one of his talents. He has a very sharp, and it's same with like Hashimoto-san, the Osaka governor. His way of saying or statements, it kind of attracts lots of people in Japan. Now now he's a little bit more less popular, but his message is very sharp and straightforward. So people tend to like people like those Hashimoto, Tamogami. It's not left or right. If there's a left liberal guy who has a sharp comment like them, he or she might be popular as well.
Microphone, please. And please introduce yourself.
Siegfried Little, freelancer from Germany. I think there is not a really swing to the right under a young Japanese voters. I think one point is the security question. If China and mostly China, I think young people see China as a threat. If they want to act the Japanese government in a very strong way. But it doesn't mean that in other fields of the policy they have kind of a right-wing ideas. I think it's more about security. And I think you're right. People like people who speak very in a tough way. I think it's exactly the opposite what these young guys do in their real life. But they don't speak in a strong way. But they like people who can do it. It's perhaps what they want to do for themselves, but they can do it. But they look to these people who can do it. It's the same with Hashimoto. Hashimoto was popular for his strong kind of speaking, but it's only this kind of speaking, not.
Actually, you just reminded me that yesterday, in the Kagoshima number 2 district, there was a by-election, and the candidate which came in third ahead of the Japan Communist Party was Taro Yamamoto's candidate. Is he an example of somebody on the left who can speak straight and be attractive to voters simply because of his style as opposed to the content of his message?
In the upper election last year, I was very much interested in the style of Taro Yamamoto's way of promoting the campaign. So I went several times to kind of watch how he was acting. The way he has, I know he's a campaign advisor quite well, and I know how their strategy is, etc. And Taro Yamamoto has a very strong kind of charisma, but it's a little bit too extreme again. It's the balance between moderate and extreme. The more extreme you are, the popular you get. But if you become too extreme, then it's difficult to cover a wide range of people. Therefore, I don't think he'll ever get in power or anything. But he will keep his seat for a while, and he will have some certain areas that he plays a role in.
I agree that Yamamoto Taro's approach toward leftist politics is the way forward, much more so than anything that the head of the DPJ, Kaida Bandi, might be dreaming of. His leadership has been both predictable and disastrous. The party has limped along and has not shown itself to have any kind of ideas about anything it wants to do other than the same ideas it had in 2009. The issue, I think, though, that we need to understand or accept is that when we talk about conservative, liberal, right, left, in the Japanese context, you have to also take a glance at the policies of these supposed conservatives or supposed liberals and say, do these fit the labels that are put on them? And for the most part, I would say that Abe's program does not fit any conservative label that we can talk about. And this is particularly true in the constant creation of new taisaku, countermeasures. Countermeasures for the destruction of the tsunami, countermeasures for the destruction of the tsunami, countermeasures for the tax rise. All these things are constantly trying to deal with previous decisions that were made, and there are constantly new programs which are expanding government in all directions. How is this a conservative program? This is government taking over the economy, both through its purchases, vast purchases of bonds, and basically monetizing the debt, but also through its own programs. It's good for the economy in the short run, and it may be the best run economy in the world. And that is something that we also have to think about in terms of the longevity of this government. In the world economy, it doesn't matter if your own economic plans make no sense. They just have to make more sense than the next guy's. And that's the dream and the miracle of Abenomics. If you think about, okay, the debt has to be repaid, the number of elderly is growing at an extraordinary rate, the total number of customers in Japan is shrinking. We lost 220,000 customers last year. We'll lose a similar, larger number this year and next year and next year and next year in increasing numbers. It can't work. But as compared to the US economy, as opposed to Europe, as opposed to other countries, it looks better. And that's all you have to do. So it doesn't have to make sense. And it certainly doesn't if you try to put it in a conservative box.
Anybody out there have something they want to say? There's a microphone there.
Elaine Kurtenbach, also of Associated Press. I was wondering, since you are proposing to gather the various forces that are out there floating around and try to unify them, what your policy platform would be, given that Mr. Abe has sort of covered all the bases and is sort of like, I don't know what you call it, go for tataki or whatever, is sort of like hitting everything without really resolving his contradictions. What would you do to create a coherent policy platform?
I think one big issue or agenda would be constitution and also collective self-defense. But the difficult thing here is Abe is looking like his interpretation of the self-defense change looks like a very small change, which is acceptable to many members, even from the opposition party, which might not be, so it might not become even an agenda, because lots of people think if it's a tiny change in the interpretation, that's a realistic change, therefore you cannot vote against the interpretation. So, but that's one thing about the Constitution and the interpretation, which might be an issue. But this will be solved probably this year, and until we see the changes of the interpretation, it's difficult to state at this point. And the other is, on the economic side, still, if you see the third arrow, he's distributing money to selected industries, agriculture, medical people, and that is something he has not done at all. And that is something DPJ, or the former government from 2009 to 2012, did not manage to do. But now there are some other group of parties like Minna no To or Yui no To, who is more strong on having a smaller government. In that sense, we will be able to set up a new issue on the size of the government and to selected distribution method. I think we should distribute directly to the people, not to the industry, medical center, pension, etc.
Can I just follow up by asking how? Through tax reform, or what? What would be your vision for how you would do that?
Tax is one big reform you can change, and the other is social security reform. Social security reform, people say our population is aging, therefore social security will rise, and which is true. But on the other hand, because people say when you talk about social security, there are lots of stupid spendings even within the social security. So that's the method of redistributing these social securities could be changed a lot.
Anybody else want to jump in at this point? Siegfried?
In this way, you still stick to the economy program of the DPJ. The DPJ want to give the money to the families, to the people, to think this way is a kind of what DPJ did, or
So like Kodomo Teate,
Yeah,
right?
you mean the child benefit
Right.
plan,
Yes.
etc. I'm still, I'm not against the child benefit plan that DPJ, so I support the DPJ former plan of the child benefit, because the balance between the generation is insane in Japan, I think. And we should distribute it more directly to the, and also this is concerning about the generation issue, but I think there's lots of ways of raising fund by not giving money to the farmers and to the doctors, and the money does not go directly to the farmers. It goes to the organization of, so people just sneak lots of money, 50% of the money. If you go to my district, there are lots of buildings of the agriculture. Even this is Tokyo District 9, Nerimaku. And you don't need large buildings to promote agriculture in Japan. It changes into banks, it changes into investment in US and Fannie Mae and etc. So there's so much stupid spending in these areas. So my plan is to go direct.
All right. Let me turn the page a little bit to another related topic. During the administration of Junichiro Koizumi, especially towards the end, there was a new term that made popularity for a while. It was called Kantei diplomacy. The leadership of the Kantei was clearly becoming strong at that time. Prime Minister Koizumi dominated the LDP in a way that hadn't been seen in a very long time, if ever. And then came the following regimes of the first Abe regime and the Fukuda regime and the Aso regime and then the three DPJ regimes, and people stopped talking about how powerful the Kantei was. But if we look at especially the first year of the new Abe regime, again, we have a situation where it seems like the government and the Kantei, the cabinet, has an extremely unusual amount of power vis-a-vis the party. Now, are we going to see this trend deepen in the future, where the government, the actual cabinet ministers, and the prime minister are really deciding policy? Or are we going to likely see a shift back to a situation where the party power holders, the party bigwigs, exercise their traditional prerogatives over the government?
Mike.
The Kantei diplomacy is now institutionalized through the Security Council, which Yachi Shotaro is currently running. And Yachi is basically the architect of what I see is the Abe model. Whether the Abe model will be continued by his successor, whoever his successor might be, I cannot say. But the Abe model, as Yachi has put it together, is there are three main relationships, which is the US-Japan relationship, the China-Japan relationship, and the South Korea-Japan relationship. And the Prime Minister's best bet is to not deal with any of them and go to fly to everywhere else and talk to everybody else. And don't get bogged down in those three, because three of them are sand traps. You get into discussions about Henoko, you get into discussions about comfort women, you get into discussions about history, where in my country, when you say something's history, that means it's over with. We don't have to deal with it anymore. Here, if it's history, we have to be burdened with it forever. Abe's diplomacy, Abe's foreign policy is based on flexibility and moving on. I was very surprised, for example, at how quickly he was able to turn against Putin in the Crimean crisis. After having gone to visit him visit 5 times in his first year in office, the person he met the most, and in whom he was investing a great deal of his diplomatic capital, he was able to turn it off. That was very impressive, and that's a personal indication that this is again an administration that won't get bogged down. Whether that's from the institutional change that has happened, I can't say, or whether it's simply just the people that he's employed.
Before we move to Mr. Kiuchi on this, I used the term "contable diplomacy," but I was also wanting to discuss how much the government leads domestic policy as well. So aside from the diplomatic issues, for example, when it comes time for TPP or other policies that deal with the home situation, do you feel that the institutional power of the Conte and the cabinet has become so entrenched that the party is no longer a first-rank player? Michael?
Okay. Please, I beg people who know better, who are at this table, and I know that some of you are, and some of you do know better, please tell me that I'm wrong about whatever it is that I'm wrong about. Raise your hand, throw something at me, whatever it takes to stop me from talking. But in the case of, is the party no longer important? Of course it's still important. It's important as a sounding board, a first sounding board. Abe cannot know the minds of the people. He's encased in that great glass bubble that is the Conte, and when he socializes with the very rich, and the leaders of corporations that are in the top ranks in the Keidanren. Insofar as in terms of his policies, he's no longer perhaps a conservative, he's more of a corporatist. He socializes and spends a lot of his downtime with people like the head of Fuji Television or JR Central's incredibly powerful Kasayoshi Yuki. These people are giving him his ideas as in terms of in policies just as much as the party, but the party then becomes the way he contacts the people. When we first came into office, everybody was talking about, oh, it's going to be Facebook, it's going to be Twitter, and we're going to be talking back and forth. I don't see that quite so important anymore, and I see the party really as reasserting itself, actually.
And I recall that, in 2011, 2012, I had the opportunity to interview a lot of DPJ lawmakers like this one here. And at that time, I remember some DPJ backbenchers complaining. They said, well, we have our committees and we have our party reports and we study them and we go to our meetings and we make our recommendations, and then Prime Minister Noda completely ignores everything we do. And I think this is one of the reasons why there was that major defection within the DPJ. But is this also a reflection of the fact that the government and the ministers have gained a strong upper hand over party policymaking?
At the time, back in Noda administration, I was not member of the administration. I was a member of the party. So I felt uncomfortable. Lots of people were frustrated. The good thing about democracy is it involves everybody, but at the same time, it takes time and slow. For example, Kante diplomacy, they ask or take no opinions about the party. They just decide 3 or 4 people, including, or 5 or 10 people, decide all the diplomacy, which is working out well at the moment. So, regardless, people feel frustration. If it's going okay, then that's fine. And I don't think I can see many people at the party who can do diplomacy. They have no experience. In LDP, there are more people who have been in the member of the Diet for a long time. So there are some people who do have experience. But at the time of DPJ, everybody had almost zero experience. So that was a good idea that they just dominated everything within the Kante. But I have lots of LDP member of Diets right now, and I talk to them. Many people look frustrated, yes. But on the other hand, they do lots of public spending right now. So if you're involved in public spending, the kokyo koji, you have lots of chance to do business within your local areas, district. So it's kind of offsetting your frustrations because you have lots of money you can spend. But I think this is doing no good to Japan at all. I think like people like Nikai-san, he doesn't appear in the newspaper, he doesn't appear anybody. But if you see from Nagatacho side, he's so powerful. He's kind of controlling everything behind the scenes. And I think, I don't like his style of doing the policies, but I think we should have had somebody like Nikai-san who can really manage the people within Nagatacho. It's like school classes, everybody complaining, but they have kind of very mature people. But the difficult thing is they're going to the wrong direction. The LDP is going to the direction. So this is what I have big concerns about.
All right, folks, you've heard a lot more. More opinions or questions?
If I might butt in on this point, I will, at the beginning of the year, Abe's nominal faction leader, well, he is his faction leader, but the relationship between them is not between a faction leader and a subordinate. Machimura was absolutely livid at the way the Kante runs policy, and he illustrated his sense of the Kante being in charge of everything and the members of the party. Now, Abe has a very special party, remember. It's one that lost a major election and then came back under him. And so he has these minions in the party who just say, this is what Abe says, so I'm for it. And Machimura looked at this and he said, this is not the LDP that I know. And he said, it's like the old Mito Komon television series where in the middle of a huge fight, somebody lifts up the inro of the Tokugawa house and says, can you see this come into your eyes? And they all fall down and they bow and they all stop arguing. And that's exactly the way he feels the party is with Abe. Once it's determined what it is that Abe is saying, this is what Abe says, everybody falls down and is quiet and waits for his judgment. And that's, if there's frustration in the party, it's the faction leaders who have been, and also the old guard, who some of them are retired, who have been the really most vocal people.
Okay, Siegfried has a comment or question, and then after that we'll move to the break.
I think discussion about.
I think the discussion about empowering Kante goes back to Koizumi. Koizumi, I was the first, he wanted to strengthen the prime minister's role. But he looked for a model of UK. I think he liked Maggie Thatcher very much, and a thorough way of governing. I think and then when Abe came in, I think he changed more to looking more to the United States, and he brought in the idea of a National Security Council in his first time of Prime Minister, and he repeated it and did it now again. I think in this way he is a Japanese nationalist. He is fascinated in this way by the U.S. style of governing by the National Security Council.
Okay, well, this will be a question we're going to let hang. You want to say something just before the break?
Just one thing.
Okay.
the reforms really started with Hashimoto rather than Koizumi. It goes way back to those times. And Hashimoto is also the start of what we have been living with since his time, which is a string of obochama prime ministers who are the relatives of previous prime ministers and previous leaders of government. The only real obochama the only ones who weren't obochama were Khan and Noda. And Noda was still pretty obochama-like. The only one we've really had who was actually not a spoiled child was Khan. So we have a psychological recycling of these children of privilege or children who have been petted all their lives, Nadeshiko basically. That's something that may play a part in their sense of themselves as the center of their worlds.
All right. Well, we are going to take a 10-minute break now. In this 10-minute break, you have several options. Of course, you can go to the men's room, or you could go to get yourself a drink, and the ladies' room, of course. But also, one of the key points here is that this is a time for you to meet some of the other people around the table, find out who's here, exchange some meishis. And if you came in late and you have not put your meishis over on the table yet, one for us, please do that at this time. And of course, if you want to run away, you can run away at this time too as well. But anyway, we'll start up again at 7:15, about 10 minutes from now. Thank you very much. Okay. I would like to restart this roundtable. The engine is rolling again. The next question I want to propose to our speakers and to those of you around the table is the Abe administration is, let's say they're in power for a few more years, as Mr. Cucek predicts. What about the legal changes that can happen in the course of that time? What about the legal changes that have been happening? So, for example, in December, there was a great deal of concern among many people among the new secrecy law. This could be one example of many legal changes that could happen that perhaps constrict or change the nature of the political system that happens after the Abe administration. My question to both of our main speakers to begin with is, to what extent are you concerned that by different legal reforms, if you want to call them, that what emerges after the administration, after the Abe administration, will be a different ballgame, in part because of a different legal framework that's in existence at that time? How can the legal regime constrict the ability of the system to move back to moderate or left politics?
I'll jump in on that one. I don't think the fight over the Secrecy Act is over, and that is a principle that I think Mr. Takatane Kiuchi has to think about as one of his possible core issues for a future party. The Secrecy Act is an abomination. It is a complete reversal of any of the global zeitgeist toward better global governance, better governance in terms of behavior of bureaucracies. It's a giant step backward, and it doesn't seem to deliver anything of importance. The only thing it seems to have delivered is applause from the Defense Department of the United States. Otherwise, the laws of the country don't have to be changed the way they are being changed, and that, I think, that fight is still going on. Every week, the Tokyo Shimbun, which is the basic source of news from the left, has at least 2 essays on the front page on just that law, because it is so unlike anything that Japan has ever had before, and it is just simply overboard. That I don't think, however, that it would be used in order to enforce a certain kind of politics. What I think it will be used is to cover up bureaucratic failures and malfeasance. Those are 2 different things. I don't fear necessarily the changes. In terms of what's coming in terms of collective security, the Abe administration last year in May proposed this concept that Article 96 of the Constitution, which requires 2/3 majorities in the House of Councilors and House of Representatives to submit a referendum on constitutional change to the people, said that that was the 2/3 barrier is too high, and immediately within 2 weeks dropped the idea because it turned out that they had never road tested it with the people, and the people actually liked the 2/3 majority rule, even though it has prevented ever a single period or comma being changed in the Constitution since its promulgation. Having done that, they then tried in this Diet session the concept that the Prime Minister can reinterpret the Constitution. And again, they ran up against a brick wall. They had never actually tried out this concept, and it turned out that most constitutional scholars and most of the people in the LDP even believe that that's the Supreme Court's job, as outlined in the articles of the Constitution, and that the Prime Minister can interpret the Constitution, but once something is declared unconstitutional, he can't undo that by himself. That's something that shows that people are very careful about the laws of this country and are actually quite powerful in stopping bad ideas.
Japanese constitution, the no-war constitution, do we want to keep it or do we want to get rid of it? When you say no war or no military, I used to think it doesn't make sense because national defense force is a military, but it says it's not a military in our constitution. So it just does not make sense. So we have to change it. It's 60 years since the constitution was written. Having said that, why do we not change the constitution if we really have to? Why do we just change the interpretation? This is a very difficult issue. Do we want to join the Gulf War? Do we want to go to, or do we have to go to the war in Afghanistan, Iraq? Then this is a very big change in the direction of Japan. So if you make him, if you let Abe do just change of interpretation, we don't need constitution at all. This is changing our future. Having said that, this discussion, we have avoided this discussion. Do we really should or do we need to go to the Gulf War? Gulf War, maybe we should have gone. But if you see the war in Iraq, to many of the Japanese people, it looked like it had no justice. So should we have joined the Iraq war? I think the answer is no. So this is a very complicated discussion we should not run away from. But it's not something one bureaucrat can just change the law and one prime minister who looked like a strong ball change so easily. So this is something we have to really look into very strongly.
Okay, well, to others in the room, how concerned are you that what legal regime emerges after the Abe administration will change the rules of the game? Or do you think that Japan will still have its flexibility to move whatever direction after the Abe government? thoughts out there? Questions? Part of the point of this event is for them to learn from you as well. So far, it's been all questions. It's like a normal press conference. Patrick? Siegfried?
I've only been here for 2 years, so many of my concepts which I brought with me are not terribly useful here. When it comes to what you say, that how will the legal system shape the future? Well, if I add just a tiny little bit of cynicism, I would say if you look at Article 9, you could say terrible lot of flexibility is possible. Is this very, how shall I say, is this very flexible approach to Article 9 an exception on how Japan approaches its laws, or is it very often very rubbery, or whatever you want to put it?
To add a little punch to that, I believe that one of the main themes of Carol von Wolferin's book, The Enigma of Japanese Power, is that Japan is actually a lawless state. That laws are taken by the bureaucracy as being general guidelines, but not really laws. How do we feel about this?
I think the Wolfram's statement is totally true, which as a lawmaker, as a former lawmaker, maybe I should not comment like that, but Japan is run by the bureaucrats rather than the lawmakers, which in some ways it worked out well post-war, but in a dynamic new 21st century, I think it's not working out well anymore. So we should change that, and we should not let one bureaucrat decide Japan should join the war or not.
I think that the lawless statement, of course, is extreme, but it would sound probably nicer if you said that the application of laws in Japan is humane. I'll take my own personal experience as examples. When my son was born, I unfortunately forgot to renew my visa while my wife was in the hospital for a month, and I was just going back and forth between the hospital and my job and taking care of my daughter. And I just missed the deadline. In my country, I would have been on a plane and sent back and not be able to go back into the country for 5 years or something absurd like that. Here, I had to write a letter and say I would never do it again. I'm very, very sorry. That kind of flexibility, the ability to not have to impose things, is important, I think, in any thing as large as the government of a country. Another example has to do with the great story of getting childcare in Tokyo. You will read in articles of women going to 30 different hoikuen or hoikusho, putting their applications, going and sitting in the parents' meetings in order to try to get their child into daycare. And when I read these stories, these horror stories in mostly in the Western media, I can always say two things. One, that person didn't grow up in that neighborhood. And two, that person probably went to school in the United States or in Europe. Why do I know this? Because if she lived in the neighborhood, if she wanted to get her child into the hoikuen or into the daycare center, what she would do is talk to her father. Her father would talk to his classmate in the elementary school who's on the city board council, and suddenly there would be a place open in the place where there was no place that's going to open because there's a waiting list of 30 kids on it. That's the way this country runs. You know people and you get things done by the other routes that are available to you. And unfortunately, Japan wants, at the same time as having this kind of system, or lack of a system, wants to open itself to the world. And if you don't have a rules-based system and open yourself to the world, you're going to have conflict, because people are going to be coming from outside who want things to be done according to the rules, want the rules to be clear, want to know who's in charge of one thing and who's in charge of the other, based on the title, not because of where they went to college and who's friends with whom. That kind of thing does not play well in an international arena, and that's the reason why Japan probably has to change, even though it might become less humane.
Anybody want to jump in?
Hello, Juja Winter, Hungarian Embassy. Just a question to one sentence that you just said. You said Japan wants to open itself up to the world. Do you really think that?
This question.
Well, it's for both of you also, a little bit based on...
Well, it's Abe's claim. I
Yes.
want the world, come here. We'll buy my Abenomics. This is a place where you can do business. I'm going to create a zone of extraterritoriality here in Tokyo and in Yokohama, where the normal rules of Japanese life will not apply to you. Come, we'll make things easier for you to do business here, at least in this small area. In Okinawa, if you're in gambling, we might put in a casino and violate our national law, which says there is no gambling in this country. They're open for business, and they want foreign business to come in.
I think the size of investment from outside Japan into Japan is still very small. And that's one of the reasons many politicians are saying we want more investments in Japan and we want to be more friendly. Having said that, I hear so many complaints from outside investors that Japan is not a country easy to invest. So we've been changing many small laws related to like M&A acquisitions, etc. The corporate tax may be a little bit too high, so we're trying to decrease the corporate tax rate. And so we're taking lots of concrete measures so that we are more friendly to outside investors. However, there's also language barriers, I think, because lots of people say, if you're living in center of Tokyo, maybe it's fine, but if you go just outside Tokyo, it's not easy to live in. It's difficult to send your kids to kindergartens, etc. But these days, many people start to speak Japanese, but I think there are still rooms that we can do lots of improvement.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Fernando from the Spanish Embassy. Hello. I only wanted to maybe refrain with a comment previous question. Sometimes we have the feeling that all this speech about opening Japan lacks some sincerity in the sense that when our companies try to come here, they face many barriers, even with investments. You mentioned that investments are terribly low by Western open economics standards. And when you see that this has been happening for so many years, sometimes you tend to think that really what you have here is a neo-mercantilist system that is defending itself and transforming itself in order to keep its essence. You see it now, for instance, in the debate that you are having in this society, also with your political constituencies, and very strongly. So on reforms that would open up the economy, that would transform the Japan Inc. system, or what is left of it, into a more open society with opportunities for everybody, including foreigners. So this issue, which is very much is very important in economic and trade the trade area, also touches the immigration issue, which is a big thing, and that would make a difference probably in terms of the stability and capability of evolving of Japanese society into a more equilibrated and economically sustainable society. I would like to know what would be your insights about that. If you think that immigration or economic openness or the transformation into a really open society if you could maybe give us some insights, or somebody wanted to do so.
Okay, yeah, I'm just going to say, just to consolidate the question there, I mean, is the constant declarations of being open for business false advertising?
I think opening, when we talk about opening Japan, we should open the labor force issues. We are losing 200,000 laborers every year now. That's one of the reasons Japan looks like it's stagnating, it's shrinking. On the other hand, because we have not been open to outside workforce, people are concerned about the social issues. I was in Europe for like over 10 years, and I worked in Germany, I worked in London, and I saw lots of social issues with people coming from outside that country. So can Japan manage that issue properly is the question. But I think we should open on a controlled base, for example, like 200,000 workforce per year to advanced labor force people. I think we should do that. But in the past, even just to hire people, the limits were too strong. But now we should loosen up. But we haven't done that yet.
The issue of immigration gets really confusing in Japan because in the first wave of that was encouraged, it was controlled based on a concept of blood, in that, believe me, I don't understand it either, but it was believed that people who had Japanese ancestry were going to fit into Japan better than people who wanted to come here just to live and make money. And so they had the vast immigration of Brazilian Japanese and Peruvian Japanese, or Peruvians and Brazilians who have their own way of living, but whose faces and whose, at least one of their names, had Japanese ancestry clearly marked on it. That didn't work out. So what we have in Japan is this peculiar situation where racial preferences were applied, but it wasn't to keep out the dark-skinned people as we see in Europe, but it was to bring in the people with skins like us, and it turned out on the inside they were different. So that experience shocked and confused folks for a long time. Now we have, in terms of immigration, most immigration is for persons like myself somewhat invisible, because where the largest immigrant populations are Koreans, but now it's Chinese, and until you see their name tags at the kombini, or you hear their accents working in the back of the restaurant, or working as your waitress here in Minato-ku, not here in Chuo, but if you go next door in Minato on a Sunday, you're not going to hear any much in the way of Japanese. It'll just be a lot of folks who look Japanese but who aren't on the inside, and that's working rather well. And that's not a government program. That's just happening. The government does facilitate it by offering, by not being too very serious about student exchanges and student programs, not making sure that they're really studying, and that helps the economy. What Kiuchi-san is proposing is opening up 200,000. They'll need more than that to both rebuild the Tohoku and build the sites for the Olympics and also do all the projects. Where I live, a lot of the things that are in the budget cannot be built because there are not enough construction workers. And those people are going to be from, probably not from Southeast Asia, but probably from South Asia and from Africa. And you're already seeing them surreptitiously on the construction sites here. I don't know what their visa situation is. I don't think that there is a visa category yet, construction worker, but there's going to be. And that's going to happen, no matter what.
Well, Japan has never really seen mass immigration in its modern history, maybe even in all of its history, at least going back the times that we can record. What would be your prediction on the impact on the political system? I mean, for example, in many countries, right-wing movements are built on anti-immigrant feelings, sentiment. Would you see something similar happen here, a nativist reaction where this could drive a move to the right?
I've seen lots of immigrants, as I said, when I was in Europe, and it did lead to social problems like anti-immigrant moves, etc. I don't know if that will happen in Japan or not, but if it's controlled properly in a in a certain manner, then I don't think we will have big issue in Japan. And there's the immigrant issue and the workforce. If people become a Japanese, that's different with accepting labor force. So it will be mixture of having immigrants and accepting labor force. So I'm not confident of controlling the situation, but that's something we'll just have to try, and if it doesn't work out, it might become a problem. But I think we can manage that in some way.
The people who are pushing hardest for increases in immigration are the right wing in Japan. They see them as the salvation of the economic system. It's the economic system they want to save. If you read Abe's book, he talks about the beauty of Japanese economics in the new section, not Utsukushi ni Kuni e, but the 30 pages that makes his book Atarashi Kuni e, Atarashi. That part, he talks about seeing the moonlight reflected on the water of the rice paddies on the northern coast of Yamaguchi Prefecture, and how this reflects the beauty of Japanese economics. And when you read that stuff, you see it, realize what their salvation, what they want to do is save the system. And the only way they're going to save the system when they have fewer workers is to get immigrants. And that's why they're pushing so hard for it, I think.
Okay, there's one, we're actually, believe it or not, getting towards the end of our time, but there is one other major issue which I want to throw out here, and that is how much of the current right-wing or the conservative dominance, the Abe administration's rise, everything, basically an accident that is involved in the utter failure of the Democratic Party of Japan regime. In 2009, there was a dominant, the DPJ dominated in that election. The LDP was on the ropes, looked like it was about to fall apart. And had the Hatoyama administration really secured itself, maybe there would be no LDP to talk about right now. They were that close, I think, to falling apart. And then we had this election in 2012, December, in which an even greater dominance, you saw the old system rush back. But this seemed to be a lot to do with the fact that the people of Japan turned against this one political party called the Democratic Party of Japan, which utterly failed to deliver. So my question to, especially to Kiuchi sensei, who was right in the middle of that. He was one of the players on the board when that was all happening. He saw it. He had colleagues, friends around him. Why did the DPJ fail so miserably? I mean, when you look back at that time, what's your analysis? What happened there?
I don't want to say too many bad things about my former colleagues, but
You'll need them.
there were many members of the Diet who had no experience in managing an organization. For example, when I worked for investment banking, I had lots of people working for me, even if it was a small group of people. Managing an organization is tough. Lots of the people who became ministers at the time, many of them had not much experience in working in the real world. So it was just not easy to manage people. So what they did was, rather than grouping the good, talented bureaucrats, they just said bad things about them. You should keep your group of people as your friends, but they made them enemies by saying, Japanese bureaucrats are crazy, they're doing stupid, etc. So, but and also, if you see some Diet members who came from the labor unions have some bad impressions from some people. But when I saw the former labor union leaders becoming a Diet member, they knew how to manage organization. They've been battling within the organization on a political base and became leaders. Therefore, these people knew how to manage it. So they were not outstanding people on TV, but they managed the kind of ministry quite well. So, but after 3-4 years, we learned a lot of lessons. And even people working for LDP these days, they're quite young, in lack of experienced people as well. So if we have the second chance of managing the administration, I think we would have good chance of improving compared to the last time. Abe-san, I had a breakfast meeting with Abe-san 3 years ago with the ambassador from Israel. There were like a group of 6 people. We were on internet TV. And I was only elected once. He was a former prime minister. And I thought, poor Abe-san, he was a prime minister. I was treated well. He was treated so badly. And I just thought, Abe-san, poor you. But now, he's a big prime minister right now. So I feel very pessimistic sometimes. But on the other hand, I've seen 4 years ago, all LDP members said, there'll be no turnaround in the government for another 10 years. They were moaning, whining, every day drinking. And I'm doing the same thing right now. However, I'm always optimistic. So when I lose confidence, I look back into Abe-san's breakfast meeting or drinking with my LDP friend members. So it's very complex feeling, but I'm very strong. I'm confident about re-managing the opposition party, which is split into tiny pieces.
So the heart of your answer is that you feel the DPJ was just incompetent managers. That was the number one reason that dropped them from power.
Yes, and one other thing I forgot to say was, in Nagata-cho, if the number of times you are elected is very important. And we thought people who are elected 5-6 times had lots of experience. But the answer was they had no experience as a ruling party. So it was same as myself, or but they became ministers because they were elected 5 times or 6 times. I feel that I should have been I could have made better minister than even them, even with lack of much experience. We're all same, elected once as a ruling party. So next time, if we choose the right people who were only elected 1 time, was much better team than the elderly people at that time. So we can choose the better people in the next new government.
Michael, you want to jump in on this?
Yeah. If you go to the website of Hagiuda Koichi, who is the representative for Hachioji, who when I first time I saw him, I was at a party for the Fukuda faction, and he was so proud that the imperial tombs are in his district, and that he was overcome, which they are, and in fact the present emperor doesn't want to be buried there. But Hagiuda is basically considered now Abe's id. Abe's the ego, Suga is the superego, Hagiuda is the id. And Hagiuda is the one who said he's going to Yasukuni, he's going to go there, and it's going to be before the end of his first year, and he was right. Now he's often seen you'll see him on Sunday mornings on the Channel 8 program because the Sankei Shimbun group loves him. Anyway, on his website, in his profile, in his CV, he points out that very clearly that in 2009 he lost with umpteen votes. And then in 2012, he won re-election with fewer votes than he lost with in 2009. Things change, and things still can change. And he won a seat, but it was with fewer votes than he had previously lost one with. The system allows for change if the people want it. So it's not completely out of the question that we're stuck forever in a LDP world. The LDP is riding high now, but still the most popular party is not affiliated with any party. That's still that still gets the most voters as its supporters. No party at all. For the person who wants to organize things, you look at the Hagiuda example and say, there's one district we can go for, and there are these districts all over Japan. That being said, I still think that the policy mix is right now, and we're not going to see much in the way of change unless we get in, as time goes on, fewer and fewer people personally loyal to the Prime Minister, and fewer people aware of what it was like to be out of power. The LDP, what made it so easy for the DPJ to take over and why they failed was because the people of Japan were sick of the LDP. They just couldn't figure out a way of getting rid of them. People talked about political reform starting in the mid-'80s. It just took election after election and keep trying to get rid of the LDP, keep trying to get rid of the LDP. And finally, the DPJ came along and they were able to get over the hump. What the DPJ didn't know is they were born on third base. They thought they had hit a triple. They were there. We're almost home. No, you were born on third base. You were born out of the disgust of the people for the LDP. You yourselves had not earned that victory. You were placed there on third base. And the leaders of the LDP, leaders of the DPJ, did not think, now the hard work begins. They thought they had done the hard work. No, the fight was just beginning. They hit a brick wall. They did not think about conservative media and how anything they did would be portrayed, and that still is in place in Japan. The Yomiuri Sankei Shimbun complex is very hard to defeat and will paint anything that you try to do as being throwing money away or being anti-Japanese or anything. We saw this most spectacularly after 3/11. Within 2 weeks, Khan is personally responsible for the meltdowns at Fukushima Daiichi because he went there and gave the orders. He must be the responsible one. And there were questions in the Diet. In the middle of rescue operations all over Japan, the LDP was playing for keeps, and the DPJ just was not ready and did not understand what was hitting them. That's something that any party that comes up has to understand. This is a tough system, and the system's out to get you. And if you're not paranoid and not willing to fight about everything every day, go into finance.
All right, I saw that Siegfried has a question. You have a mic over here?
I think every party after 3/11 would lose the next election. I think the 3/11 case was such a big catastrophe for Japan. No government could satisfy the people dealing with this catastrophe. Every government would deeply disappoint people, and the result would be if the LDP was in power there at this time, it would defeat it in the same way the DPJ was defeated. I think this is greatly I think it's underestimated. I think the disappointment about reforms of the DPJ was one reason, and but I think the same we have to see the disappointment how to deal with the 3/11 catastrophe. But I think no government could satisfy Japanese people in dealing with.
Well, Siegfried kind of jumps ahead here because one of the future roundtables, probably in the next few months, I'm going to be organizing, will be one on the politics of Fukushima. And so we're going to look probably more deeply at that and many other questions related to how Fukushima played out and plays out and will play out in Japanese politics. So I'm going to kind of short-circuit your question there until that next occasion. Does anybody want to say anything finally before I begin to wrap things up? Something that you don't want to leave sitting on the table before you walk out of the room? Okay, microphone.
Mr. Cucek shook his head quite visibly while Siegfried was talking, so I would be interested in his answer.
Okay.
The DPJ is too decent and would have never done what the LDP did. They never would have done it because it was horrific. The LDP wanted power again, and it didn't matter how they got it. And unless you realize who you're dealing with and you honestly approach them that way, you will constantly lose and lose again and again and again. You don't have to become like the LDP to win in terms of its hard-as-nails approach to politics. But you have to know that's what's coming. That's why I shake my head. The DPJ, if it had been in the opposition, would have helped in any way possible to push forward any kind of legislation, any kind of action to make the country whole again. That's the difference, and it was important. But the DPJ just couldn't believe it. They were shell-shocked. They could not believe that the LDP would go so far out, be so bloodthirsty. But that's their very nature. When they're in power, they can be magnanimous. Put them out of power, and they will do anything to get you. Anything.
DPJ knows what it's like to be a ruling party and also what it's like to be lost in the election. So maybe at the time when we were the first time ruling party, we were amateurs like Michael just commented, but now everybody is feeling very upset when you wake up in the morning, you know, we're no longer a ruling party. I even don't have a badge on. You know, life is tough, but we know what to do now. So I think people do change, and DPJ or other opposition parties are changing a lot. And maybe LDP might forget about how they felt like when they were on the opposition side. So I do think we do have chances for changes again.
Okay, final yes or no question for our two guests, and it'll be right on that theme. When you look at the opposition parties today, do you see that killer instinct, that go for the throat that the LDP had after March 11th, or do they look like the same old softies? So does the opposition have the killer instinct? Michael, yes or no?
No.
One change I felt from talking to a member of DPJ recently is that all the opposition parties thought they were strong. Ishin, they were confident. Minna no To, Yui no To, they thought they were quite strong. DPJ thought they were weak, but they knew they had some money and they had big organization. And so in the last several elections, they did not team up together. In 2012, December, they did not team up together. In the upper election last time, they did not team up together. But now we have 300 districts in Japan. DPJ would have selected 300 candidates for the next election. But what they're doing right now is selecting only 150. This means that they are prepared to form alliance amongst the opposition party, which shows a lot of change. It's not easy to kick out some of the candidates who were former members of the Diet and not give them a district. But they're doing that so that they can form an alliance. And if we can form an alliance together, and sometimes it does not make sense because the policy is totally different. But the will to come back into the government will overcome these smaller issues. And having said that, we have to have a proper policy to team up together. And this will happen in the near future. And there are lots of themes, issues that we have to face against. LDP are very smart and clever, but I think we have good chance of forming together, having good policy, having good team together. And in that sense, maybe it may take 2 years, 3 years, but we will come back again.
All right, they're hungry. Well, and if you are hungry for knowledge to continue participating in this event, for those of you who are regular members, please become regular participants because we want to deepen our knowledge and continue these discussions with other analysts on some of the same topics and some different topics. And if you're not a member of the FCCJ, by golly, now's a good opportunity to start thinking about becoming one. So before we finish up here, however, these two gentlemen have earned their membership simply by being here and leading this discussion. For Mr. Takatane Kiuchi, I would like to offer you a 1-year honorary membership to the FCCJ.
Thank you very much.
And the same goes for Michael Cucek. I'm going to poke him many times to show up as an audience member for future roundtables. So, Michael? Thank you. And the same goes for you. If you want to participate in future roundtables as a guest member, please come. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming this evening. I hope that you find the roundtable format to be promising for the future. And I hope to see many of you and many more in the months ahead. Thank you very much.